Aloha, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the Bird's Nest podcast, which I'm looking forward to. I'm your tour guide for this glorious 1 hour. My name is Paul Domowitch, but most people call me Domo, including my 2-year-old grandson who's celebrating his birthday today and is not definitely not watching this podcast. For those of you who don't know me or chose to purge my name from your memory bank after I took a buyout from the Inquirer 2 years ago, I covered pro football and the Eagles in this town for nearly 40 years before taking the buyout in October of 2021. I had planned to semi-retire. That plan is kind of not working out very well. I had planned to sleep late and become a gentleman gardener and take my wife all over the world on trips. We'll eventually do that, but not long after taking the buyout, some opportunities arose. I've been working for a great pro football website called the 33rdteam.com. I've been writing for them for 2 years now. And I'm also co-hosting a Monday night radio show during the season on WBCB. With my good buddy Paul Jolovitz, which will start in a couple of weeks. So, and now in an unexpected turn of events, I'm hosting a podcast, which I never expected to do in my life, but here I am. If it could last 2 weeks if I'm really bad at it, it could last a lot longer until the kids put me in a nursing home. If in 15, 20 years, if I'm decent, so we'll see how it goes. I hope you'll tune into this podcast every week. I'm going to try to make it as informative and entertaining as possible, and we'll try to stay in my pro football lane and not talk politics. I may talk about British detective series, may talk about something my kids don't like, which is my fondness for chain restaurants, but other than that, we'll talk Eagles and the NFL and football, and I'll have some great guests on, including the one I have on today to entertain you and inform you. Today's guest, I am truly honored to have on. He's a legend in Philadelphia. Merrill Reese is beginning, I believe, I'll have him correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's his 46th season as the voice of the Eagles. I've known Merrill and been a friend of his going back to 1982 when I came to Philadelphia from Fort Worth, Texas, where I was working. So without further ado, let me bring Merrill on and we'll talk football. Hey, Merrill, how you doing?
I'm well, Paul. First of all, it's year number 47. I actually
47.
began 40 in 77. I was doing the color when Charlie Swift died with 2 games to go, and they put me into the play-by-play seat, which I was not unfamiliar with, having done college football in a lot of games, and I've been doing it ever since. And secondly, you can count me among those who are thoroughly annoyed with you because of you taking a buyout. Because and I have said this to you often, I think there is no greater authority in NFL football than Paul Domowitch. I always enjoyed reading you. I always enjoyed seeing you and ascertaining your opinion about what was going on in the league and with the team. Nobody knows the game or the league better than you do. So other than that, I'm fine, and here we go.
And the check is in the mail. Now, starting year 47, Merrill, are you
47.
still as juiced? 46. I'm sorry. Are
47.
you still as juiced?
47.
47. Okay. Are you still as juiced as ever for the start of this season as you were for week 1 of each season 1?
Yes. I will tell you that I will not take a buyout. I will not leave. They will have to remove me eventually with a crane, because this is what I love to do more than anything else in the world, and I have the same passion for it. The same, I'm as nervous on a game day, even of a preseason game, than I am for a Super Bowl, because there's so much work that goes into it. There's so much memorization. I feel the way you feel when you're going into a very important final in college, except that Instead of an instructor reading your blue book and saying, well, this is wrong, you mess up something and millions of people are there to say, gosh, what is he thinking? So I love every single second of it. And as the day goes on, I get more and more jumpy. I eat my pancakes at home because once we get to the stadium, I can't look at food. And then it all begins. And the moment Joe McPeak, my producer, taps me on the shoulder and says, go, I come on with an open and it all goes away and I float and I'm in a zone for the next 3.5 or 4 hours. So it is truly my greatest passion. And in fact, I've told people this and they find it hard to believe. But aside from my family and my wonderful wife, my children, my grandchildren, there's nothing I love to do more in the world than play golf. I play 4 or 5 days a week right now in the off season. And if you said to me, Merrill, play golf or play Augusta, I'd say play golf. Augusta will come after I get off the air.
Yeah. I remember, Merrill, when I did a profile on you before Super Bowl 52, you told me
by
at
the way,
time...
was the best article ever written about
me. Thank you. I appreciate it.
It is framed and hangs in the family room.
That's great. I'm touched to hear that. You told me before the game that you didn't see that season coming, that you were thinking maybe 10-6, but certainly not a Super Bowl championship. I was curious, going into last season, what did you see? They were in the second season of Nick Sirianni. They were coming off a 9-8 year when they backed into the playoffs and then went one and done against Tampa Bay. Did you ever imagine they would make it to the Super Bowl?
I thought they could. I thought they were very, very good. I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I will tell you, Paul, and I think you know this, right. From day one, I was a big advocate of Jalen Hurts. I thought he was very, very special.
Yeah.
I liked him when I saw him at Alabama. I loved him when I saw him at Oklahoma. Instead of yelling, what? I stood up and applauded when the Eagles drafted him in the second round. I thought he was special from the very, very beginning. And, of course, that opinion was backed by my good friend Doug Peterson, who would talk to me and tell me how much talent this young player has. So, quite honestly, I thought that this team could go places last year. Now, you never go into a season, including this one, by saying this team's going to a Super Bowl, because the NFL is a war of attrition. And a lot of things can happen. A bad bounce can happen. A key player can go down at any time. But I thought this was a very good team, and I thought they would be one of the teams that would be competitive in the NFC with a chance. That's all, a chance to go the distance.
Yeah. Merrill, and you know this, but history is not on their side this season. I think since the start of the salary cap era in 1994, just one Super Bowl runner-up has made it back to the big game. That was the 2018 Patriots, who ironically made it back and won the year after losing to the Eagles. So right now, they're universally regarded by most people as the best team in the league, certainly the best team in the NFC. So it's going to surprise no one if they get back there. Yet, you always face challenges that you didn't expect, whether it's injuries, mainly injuries. That they were remarkably healthy last year. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, but are you feeling pretty good right now about their chances of getting back there?
Yeah, I think they're the best team. I think they're the best team in the NFC, and they may be the best team in the NFL. But I also realize that I don't go by the fact that nobody's done this except for the Patriots. I don't think that means anything. And we're talking about statistics there and probability and stuff like that. I don't even think about that. But what I do know is that it's a war of attrition. And other than 2017, which was the darndest year I ever saw, where they lost Jason Peters and then they lost Jordan's, they lost one guy after another. They lost their best linebacker. They lost Caleb Sturgis, their kicker. They lost Chris Maragos, their best special teamer. So, when you're talking about that, that was, and then ultimately the guy who was the MVP, Carson Wentz, that was a complete outlier. But but normally you lose that many key people, you're not going anywhere. But that team was a freak of nature, really.
Well, you remember 2020, I guess it was, their offensive line, I counted 40 missed games due to injury. I mean, that's when Brandon Brooks missed the entire season. Jason Peters missed half the season. I mean, you can go down the list. Compare that to last year, 2 missed games due to injury. Jordan Mailata, I believe, had a shoulder injury and missed one game. And then Lane Johnson ends up tearing his what did he tear in the week 17? Hamstring? No. Yeah, hamstring.
Was it a groin injury?
Yeah. But anyway, there was nobody. He missed one game and was playing with the injury through the playoffs and played as well as he has in his life. When people thought there was no way he was going to be able to move side to side against pass rushers. But that's Lane. Just an amazing guy.
Well, I have to tell you, this group might be the best offensive line that I've seen in all these years. Yeah. Now they were pretty good, not to be one of these memory lane people, but they were pretty good when they lined up with Dick Vermeil's Guy Morris and Woody Peoples and Petey Payroll, Jerry Sizemore, and Stan Waters. But side to side, this is the best they've had. This is the best offensive line in the league, I think.
Yeah. The one question which will be answered sometime this preseason is who's going to be playing right guard between Kelsey and Lane Johnson.
You mean Cam Jurgen, the right guard? Oh, between them. Like you were saying,
you don't think it's much of a competition
between those who wins the battle? No, it's going to be either the rookie or it's going to be Cam Jurgens. Right. You're
putting your money on Jurgens right now?
I would, because of the experience factor. Yeah. But we'll see.
The criticism of Cam.
Steen is pretty impressive.
Yeah, very impressive. Steen just doesn't. He hasn't played guard very much. He was a tackle in college.
Mostly Vanderbilt.
Right. And then his last year at Alabama at right tackle and left tackle. The criticism of Cam Merrill has been whether he's heavy enough, whether he doesn't have enough rocks in his pocket or not. Historically, guards are 320 pounds, but that doesn't mean he can't play there. I mean, they've groomed him to be Jason. They drafted him to be Jason Kelsey's replacement at some point. The way Jason's going and the way he's playing and staying healthy, that could be 2029 right now. But do you feel Cam's big enough to play that right guard position right now?
I do, and I think one of the reasons that I'm so up on him is because he has the best offensive line coach that the Eagles have ever had. One of the best offensive line coaches. I almost think that the offensive line coach for a team is as important as the offensive or defensive coordinator, because it's so important. When you look at the magic that Jeff Stoutland performed with Jordan Mailata and made him one of the best left tackles in football, which he is. Mm-hmm. First year, when they drafted him and he had never played football, I came to Stout one day early in the season and I said, "How's Jordan Mailata doing?" And he took a deep breath and he said to me, "Merrill, it would be like asking you to broadcast the game Sunday in French." And I said, "After bonjour, I'm in deep trouble." But this guy knows all the ins and the outs. He's an amazing personality. He's a bright guy who learns quickly, and he has a passion for the game. So who am I to say?
Jordan Mailata is going to be mentioned on Jeff Stoutland's tombstone. it's just amazing what he's done with that.
Not too soon, I hope.
Not too soon. But, I mean, to take a guy who had never played the game, who had never gotten down in a three-point stance, and turn him into, granted, Jordan Mailata has worked his tail off to become the left tackle he's become, but he couldn't have done it without Jeff Stoutland. It's been an incredible partnership, and it's probably Jeff Stoutland's greatest accomplishment in all the years he's been a coach.
Probably to get somebody like that and take them from A to Z. Absolutely. Yeah. And then you're fortunate. And I think Lane Johnson's a terrific player. I think Lane Johnson's a Hall of Famer one day. That's how good I think he is. But I want to tell you something. You get in a career, this is like we said, it's been my 47th season. You get a guy, you get a man and a player like Jason Kelce once in a career. This man will go down as one of the most popular and most impressive athletes in all sports in the history of Philadelphia. That's how good he is. I will be surprised if he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Absolutely. Merrill, we have to take a quick break for a commercial. We'll be right back.
Hey, Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
We're back with Merrill Reese. Merrill, I wanted to ask you, we were on the subject of coaches with Stout. I wanted to ask you about the two new coordinators. That's a big challenge that Nick Sirianni faced when he lost Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, who both became head coaches in Indianapolis and Arizona. Brian Johnson was promoted from quarterbacks coach to replace Steichen as offensive coordinator. And Sean Desai came in and has replaced Jonathan Gannon as the defensive coordinator. I mean, I thought both were excellent hires. I think they're both going to be terrific coaches. And I may be overestimating, but I think both of them are probably only going to be here 1 year, because if this team has the success I think it's going to have this year, both of them are going to be at the top of the list for head coaching jobs. So I'm curious what your opinion of both of them are. They both spoke in the last several days to the media, but you've gotten to know them in the weeks and months of the off season. What are your thoughts on the two of them?
Paul, if you made a statement to me like that about maybe 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I would have said you're out of your mind, because they're first-time coordinators and this is their first year. But this is a different NFL. And I have had the opportunity in the last couple of weeks to meet both of them personally and have a conversation with both of them. And I couldn't be more impressed. No, the proof is when we see their offense and their defense in a real NFL game and see what they bring to it. But as people, as men, they are both extremely bright, extremely articulate, wonderful communicators, liked by their players. I think they are two guys who have as good an opportunity as anybody of making that bridge, crossing that bridge from coordinator to head coach very, very quickly. I mean, we saw it with Steichen last year, and I never was thinking of him as a immediate head coach that fast after 2 years with Nick. But you know what? He did a great job. And the same with Jonathan. Now, Jonathan, from the day he arrived, JG, everybody was saying he's on everybody's short list. He's one of these, he's the incoming genius. So it didn't shock me as much. But and both of them, I think, are good men. The problem is, both of them are going to have a difficult time. And the reason they're going to have a difficult time is because I personally don't have a lot of confidence in either the Indianapolis Colts organization behind Irsay, and I don't have as much confidence in the Bidwell family putting together a great atmosphere and a situation for a new head coach. I think it's tough. It's tough. But one of the best assistant coaches I have ever met, and I knew him as a player, and he did a great job in the league as a coordinator, is also going into one of these tough to win franchises, and that's DeMeco Ryan. And he's in Houston, who gave David Coley did an amazing job in Houston, and they gave him 1 year. 1 year.
Yeah.
David Coley did a great job winning anything with that group, and boom, out the door. Incredible. But DeMeco is amazing, and I think they gave him so much money that they've got to stay with him and give him a chance.
Yeah. Brian Johnson spoke a couple of days ago, and one of the questions he was asked was about his ability to do the play calling and step in and do the play calling. And I was really impressed with his answer. I mean, clearly he has no doubt that he can do the job. He's got, people don't realize, he was an offensive coordinator in college at 3 different schools, including the University of Florida. Yeah, where he caught.
University of Miami, right? Oh, Florida.
Yeah,
you're right. Florida. Yeah.
Florida, University of Houston, and then his alma mater in Utah. So, he's done it. He had a chance to be a head coach at Boise State and South Carolina. Both wanted him.
Yeah.
He clearly, I admire the move he made to the NFL after never having coached in the league. But, as he pointed out, it's a group effort. I mean, play calling is done during the week. I mean, you put together your play sheet, with the rest of the coaches, including the head coach. It's not like you go, you're standing on the sidelines in the fourth quarter and you've got to come up with a play that you didn't talk about with your head coach, with your quarterback. So I think he's going to do a terrific job.
Paul, can I go into a memory lane once again? And it goes back to the 80s. And we're staying at the Crystal City Marriott outside of Washington as the Eagles are getting set to play the someday to be Commanders. And sitting in the lobby or standing in the lobby was a guy who I got to know and revered by the name of Sid Gilman, who is in the Hall of Fame. The guy who actually taught Bill Walsh the West Coast offense. And I used to bother him every time we were down at the facility. I could go into his office and I'd ask him about this. A lot different things are a lot different then. And you could actually go move around the building whenever you wanted, talk to whoever you wanted. And I went over to him that Saturday night, and I asked him how he uses the hash mark in his passing game and what he thought would be best used against Washington tomorrow. So I guess he had it with me. So he pulled me over. He said, "I want you to sit down." He said, "Tomorrow we're going to that stadium." He said, "And in the stadium is 60,000 offensive coordinators. Every week you have 60,000 offensive coordinators." He said, "The fans don't know a thing about what they're doing on defense, but every fan thinks he can be an offensive coordinator." And he said, "I want to tell you something. The play calling doesn't mean a thing." He said, "It's minimal." He said, "Because we know what they're going to do. Tomorrow, they're going to give the ball to number 44, and they're going to run a counter tray. And you know what? We're going to have our backsides handed to us because we can't stop it." So play calling, I'm not saying to you that it doesn't mean anything. I'm not saying that because it does. But for the most part, it's the blocking, it's the tackling. Can you beat your man on the quick slant? Can you hold on to the football? Can your offensive line control the line of scrimmage? Play calling is overrated. Yeah. And most good coaching staffs can come up with a sensible game plan. And maybe there are 2 or 3 plays a game when you can really second guess them. But for the most part, I think it's the overall scheme of a team. I think when you're talking about coaches, you're talking about the biggest factor is the coach a good teacher and communicator. If you can't communicate, you can't be a good position coach. You can't be a good head coach. And I've that made Dick Vermeil was such a great communicator. Andy Reid was a great communicator. Doug Peterson communicated to every guy on that squad. And I don't care what Chip Kelly's IQ is or his fancy schemes and mile-a-minute offense. He couldn't get through to his players. He couldn't look at them in the eye and communicate. And he's proven the same thing at UCLA. It's a little different in college than when you have 100 guys on the sideline and all kinds of assistants. But I think in the NFL, the great communicators, Belichick, we talk about Belichick and people say, he doesn't have any personality. They're talking about his press conference. Every player I've ever met who played for Belichick and who knows Belichick says that he is a great man to play for. Dan Klecko told me that. Sean Landetta told me that. He knew him when he was a coordinator with the Giants. Belichick's a great communicator. He's not with the press. He could care less about the media, but he can control a football team.
Yeah. Merrill, let's I wanted to talk a little bit about your career. I love this quote from when I did that profile on you before Super Bowl 52. You said, "I never thought how long I was going to do this. It was my goal to get it. And when it happened, I just wanted to do it forever." That's the way I still feel to this day. I don't ever want to stop. I just want to do it forever until they have to remove me from that booth, as you pointed out earlier, with a crane.
The golf cart will be okay too.
I love it as much or more than I did when I started. Every year, I just love it more and more. On game day, I wake up, as you mentioned earlier, just as nervous now as I did the first year I was doing it. 5 years later, since you said that, you still feel that way, don't you?
Absolutely, nothing's changed. Yeah. I do love it.
You always knew what you wanted to do. Went to Temple, worked for the radio station, covered every sport. You had Eagles tickets, and I remember you telling me you used to get your binoculars and just be fixated on Bill Campbell up there in the press box.
I did.
Yeah.
Well,
you were working 7 days.
You say I always knew what I wanted to be. Well, I did. But when you say always, don't forget, originally, I wanted to be the quarterback. As
don't we all?
7-year-old, I was going to throw the winning touchdown pass.
Yeah.
Or I was going to hit the one-on-one to make the one-on-one to win the basketball tournament. Or I was going to serve an ace to win to win Wimbledon. As a kid, I just loved being immersed in sports. And while at a very young age, I would listen to a radio in our house. My dad was a dentist in West Philadelphia. And in our living room behind the office, we had a great big console radio. And you could put me down on the floor and as a 3 or 4 year old, and I could listen to Penn football and Phillies baseball and things like that and just be mesmerized by it. But I grew up, I've heard people who knew me then say, I remember when Merrill would sit there and watch a game on television and describe it. That's not true. I never did that. I was out playing. I played sports from the time I could walk, and I loved it. Not that I was at any great level. I played a lot of tournament tennis, but mostly I just loved every time I was out there throwing a pass, whether it was flag football or I was the kid who came home. I didn't come home from elementary or junior high. I stayed in the schoolyard and played basketball until it was dark. So I just loved playing it. And I'll bet, Paul, a lot of us who are in the media and broadcast over and as journalists grew up really loving to play sports. Yeah.
Merrill, you got to tell the story because it's just it's inspiring, the perseverance involved in it. You're, I think, at WBCB at the time, and you applied for a job at KYW, and you go and interview there, and I forget the guy's name, but he did not exactly tell you that you were going to be the next Vince Scully. Kind of tell me about that again.
Well, his name, I've never forgotten his name. I don't know if he's living or where he is, but his name was Reggie Late, Laite, and they were looking for newscast, somebody to be a newscaster. And I was just trying. I had been at WBCB. I had been in Pottstown for a year. I had been at WBCB for 2 years. After all this time, I was making. I was at the top of the WBCB salary scale, which I'm happy to say that as a part owner, we've raised it, but it was $125 a week. That was it. And I went to KYW for an audition, and they gave me some wire copy, and they said, rewrite it, which I did. And they put me in a recording studio, and I read it. And I felt very good about it because I didn't stumble over one word, and I read it rather smoothly. And then they called me into the news director's office, this Reggie Late, and he said to me, I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to do you favors. And I'm thinking, great, I'm going to be on KYW. He said, I'm going to tell you that if you want to have a career and make any money, you're not going to be on the air because you do not have the sound that we are looking for. So I would suggest that you either find another career or go behind the scenes and do something else in broadcasting. I was shocked. And I went home and I went up to my bedroom and I closed the door. I lied down, and then my mother came up and she said, dinner. I said, I'm not coming down for dinner. She said, why? So I told her the story. And she said, well, he's right. And I'm thinking, my mother says he's right. I said, oh, okay. She said, and it's my fault. She said, because I raised a weakling. If you are listening to one person and let all your dreams and all the things you've done go down the drain, then you can stay up here for the next 6 months and don't come down for dinner as far as I'm concerned. I went back to BCB, and within 6 months, I was hired by WWDB in the city, in the major market. Yeah. And within 6 months, Reggie Late was fired.
Your mother's quite the motivator. We have to take a quick break right now. We'll be right back, Merrill.
Hey, Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
And we're back with Merrill Reese. Merrill, I know over the years you've had opportunities to take network jobs, to take jobs for other teams at good money, yet you've never left. What's kept you here? How much of it is the team you cover? What's been the reason you have not been tempted to leave this city?
Paul, I'm so happy doing what I'm doing. I love it. I grew up as an Eagles fan, even though when I go on the air, I'm not what somebody would call a traditional homer. I don't root. I'm honest. If they play badly, I say they play badly. I know what my limits are. I'm not going to say they should get rid of this coach or get rid of that. But I am as honest as they can possibly be. But I deep down love the Philadelphia Eagles. I love Philadelphia. I like the fact that I am managing partner of a radio station and online television station in Levittown. I love the fact that instead of traveling 20 weeks a year, I'm traveling half that amount of weeks a year, and that I could grow up with my children going to their school games and plays and doing everything else. I have a wife who used to see me go to training camp every year and say to me, do everything you can to be at your best. I'll take care of everything else. And I love the fact that I can work at WBCB with a lot of young people and work on their careers. And they keep you young. They keep you. I love when the interns come in and I say to them, and we hire them eventually. And I say to them, give me 2 years. Give me 2 years. And I will do everything I can to make contacts for you and help you move to the next step. But I love all of that. I think sometimes people, one of the things I tell people on the way up is enjoy every step of it. I loved when I was in Pottstown, even though at the beginning I was working 7 days a week for the first 6 months for $65 a week. But I enjoyed every day. I loved my stop in Levittown. I loved everything along the way. I enjoyed it. Don't get to the next job and say, now here's where I want to be. Here's where I want to be. As far as the networks were concerned, sure, that would have been fun. But WIP has been very kind to me. And then it was YSP and then IP again. They've been very, very kind to me and very, very generous. And I have no complaints. There was one program director at WIP once upon a time who wanted to get rid of me. But for the most, his name was Tom Bigby. And he did not want me there. He came in and he didn't like the fact at the time WIP was just getting into the sports talk business. And he wanted Stan Walters, who was my color man, and I to get into an argument every week during the game. And he wanted us to do what Brookshire and Cataldi were doing on the morning show. He wanted us to have that. And I refused to do it. And he was wanting me to do other things that to me were not sound, were not sincere, were not what I wanted to do. So it was his determination that by hook or by crook, he was going to get me out of there. What he didn't know was that at the time, as I told you, I grew up as a tennis player. So a couple of times a week in the afternoon, I would meet a guy who had become a very good friend by the name of Fred Schabel. Fred Schabel, do you know the name? Fred Schabel was a wonderful man.
I do.
He was a former UMass basketball coach who became the athletic director at Penn. And at the time, he was the president of Spectacor that owned the station. So when Bigby tried to make a move, Fred Schabel said to him, don't you even think about it. So I survived. But other than that, it has been working with wonderful people. We have a wonderful program director at WIP now by the name of Rod Lakin. And the market manager for Odyssey Broadcasting is a guy named David Yadgaroff, who I consider a friend. And he says to me all the time, Merrill, what do we have to do to keep you happy? And I said, just let me do what I'm doing. I love every second of it. And I appreciate working for somebody like you. So I've been fortunate when you love the people you work for and you're allowed to do things in a way that you feel is best for your audience and best for your profession. You've got everything.
Let me get back to the Eagles for just a second, Merrill, before I get back to your career, because I have to ask the nightly agree to disagree question, or statement, which is Kenny Gainwell will lead the Eagles in rushing attempts this season. Agree or disagree? I agree because the way they used him in the playoffs, clearly, I think he's durable enough. I quit. I think they have a terrific running back situation now with the addition of DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny if Penny can stay healthy. But I think when all is said and done, that if you're looking for somebody that's going to lead this team in carries, it's going to end up being Gainwell. I'd be interested in your opinion on Kenny and on that running back situation.
I would agree with you. Based on what we've seen in the past. I think that the former Memphis star is going to probably have more carries than anybody else. But I also am a big fan of Boston Scott. I think he's a terrific little back. He's the giant killer who, when you get down near the goal line, all of a sudden they lose him behind the line of scrimmage, and they blink and they find him standing 5 yards deep in the end zone. And I love Boston Scott. So,
Yeah, so
but I'm anxious to see what DeAndre Swift will do, not only as a running back, but to the passing game. And Penny, when healthy, is a force to be reckoned with. So I would, but if I think it makes sense to say that if you take the injury factor out of it, which we have no idea about, Kenny Gainwell would be the odds-on favorite to be probably the workhorse among the running backs.
Yeah. One thing I'm going to be interested in seeing with this offense this year, particularly with Brian Johnson, now the offensive coordinator, is how Gainwell and Swift are going to, how frequently they're going to be used as in the passing game. Last year, I think Eagle running backs, including Gainwell, only had 48 catches combined. It didn't seem to be something that Jalen liked to do, mainly because he was having such success throwing the ball down the field to AJ Brown and DeVonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. Brian Johnson in college, is particularly at Florida, their offense really liked to use the running backs as receivers. I think Gainwell and Swift both are two of the top pass catching backs in the league, not just as on routes out of the backfield, but I think both of them are guys that you can line up anywhere and they can create mismatches against the defense. I was curious what you think about that, what you think we're going to see with Swift and Gainwell as far as possibly being more prominent in the passing game this year.
I asked Brian during his media session yesterday, I asked him that as a new coordinator, does he come in and just take over from where they left off last year, or does he schematically change things or bring some new things into the offense? And his answer is, we're always trying to get better. We're always looking for ways to implement something new or something that's going to help us and give us more options. So when you have talent like the guys you mentioned, you're going to try to make use of it. Although, do you have enough footballs to go around? Because, Paul, I believe this. I'd be interested in hearing you answer this, so I'll interview you for a second. I believe that with DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert, they have the best trio of receivers that I've ever seen in Eagles uniforms.
Yeah, I would probably agree. And then throw in the fact that
I used to think about Harold and Mike, but don't forget Harold Carmichael. When Mike came in 1982, Harold was near the end of his career, and Mike in his first year only caught 10 balls.
Yeah. And throw in the fact that Goddard is probably one of the best inline blocking tight ends in the league. So something they never saw that coming when they drafted him out of South Dakota State. They thought that he was just going to be a receiving tight end, and he turned out to be a terrific blocker. It's going to be interesting. I mean, my feeling is that offenses have to continue to evolve, because this offseason, every team every defensive coordinator in the NFC East, every defensive coordinator on the Eagles schedule has been watching film, trying to figure out how they're going to stop A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith this year. So you've got to have options. You've got to put pressure on them someplace else if there are games when they do that. So that's why I think Gainwell and Swift are going to be factors, more of a pass catching factors this year.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, Merrill. Let's go back to 2015. You get a call, and the Eagles inform you that you're going into their Hall of Fame. Did you see that coming?
2016. Yeah.
16. Okay.
16. Yes. No, I didn't. I never thought about it. Quite. It sounds funny, but I never thought about it. I just think about doing my job and enjoying it. I never think about things like that. I think about a hole in one every now and then, but I which I have one, by the way, but I never thought about halls of fame or things like that. That stuff that just comes. the real reward is doing the job. But when Jeffrey Lurie called me, I was really overcome with emotion because I couldn't believe it. But it was a great thrill. It was wonderful that night when I went into the Hall of Fame with Jeremiah Trotter and stood there at the middle of the field and thanked the crowd, thanked the best fans in the National Football League for really giving me the success that I've had.
Yeah. Your old broadcast partner, Stanley Walters, told me a few years ago, he paid you the ultimate compliment. He said, to transmit excitement over a microphone is hard to do, but Merrill does that. He brings the excitement of this game and the passion of the crowd to the people listening. I mean, you've heard stories over the years from hundreds and hundreds of people of how they turned down the sound on their TV and listened to you and Mike or you and Stan before that. How difficult is it to do that, and especially to a fan base like this one, as passionate as Eagles fans are?
Well, Paul, it's very interesting that you use the word transmit. And I'm glad Stan used that word, because occasionally somebody will say to me, you really make a game exciting. And I understand what they're saying, and I appreciate the compliment, and I appreciate them being nice. But no, I do not make a game exciting. What I set out to do is to transmit the excitement of an exciting play, of an exciting win. I try to carry out the feel that you have at a stadium when the team makes a big play. And the excitement is something that I relay, that I transmit, but not build. Because if you do that, if from play one you are screaming and yelling and going out of your mind, the truly great moments will be cheapened. So I try to transmit. Now, if a game is going poorly, the team's playing badly, they're down by 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, I have a responsibility to try to keep a broadcast interesting, especially preseason. I have a notebook. I still handwrite notes, and I will have a whole page of topics that I can bring up with Mike Quick in the fourth quarter of a game when the players are known only to their mothers, so that I can try to keep the broadcast interesting. But you never try to phony up the excitement or make a moment bigger than it actually is.
Yeah. It's funny. The whole COVID thing seems like 100 years ago now, but 2020 and 2021, you and Mike didn't travel. You broadcast the road games from the link with no one in the crowd. You talk about, kind of feeding off the crowd and things. How difficult was that? Was it, what kind of experience was that for you and Mike?
Well, number one, Paul, I don't know if you know that, but in our headsets, we were getting the crowd noise piped in from the stadium. So that helped a great deal.
That helped.
Yes, absolutely, because he still had the feeling of being there. And number two, there were instances when it really was a little bit better. I mean, we didn't have to go to that dump in Washington. You've been there, where you can't
I was going to
see
ask
the
you about
scoreboard.
that.
When they go past the 50, you can't tell what they're doing. You've got to guess. You can't tell if they picked up 6 yards or 16 yards. So in a stadium like that, it was actually better. And then one night the Eagles were playing the 49ers, and the game ended, and it was late at night. It was 11 o'clock at night, and Mike said, do you realize that right now we'd be going down, sitting in the team bus, waiting to go to the airport and take a flight home and get off of the plane at 6 a.m. in the morning after flying all night, get home at 7:30, and then get up and try to go to a press conference a few hours later? I said, this isn't so bad. But the truth of the matter, overall, you want to be there. You want to be there, and you want to feel the real crowd. And you want to be where the action is, and I still love it. But the fact of the matter is, there were some benefits during those couple of years.
Yeah. Mary, we got to take a quick final break here, and then we'll be right back.
Hey, Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
We're back with Merrill Reese. Merrill, you had mentioned earlier Washington and the dump that is their stadium down there, and Dan Snyder at some point I can't remember what year it was that he moved the press box to the end zone down low where you couldn't see. But I know you've never made a secret of how you detested him and that stadium. I'm curious, are you hopeful at all with Josh Harris as the new owner that he'll move the press box back to a respectable location?
I think they'd have to blow up the stadium first and build a new one. But you know what?
Which they're going to do. It's going to take time, I guess.
Sure. But the truth of the matter, I'm being very, very honest with you, that the trend is that the best seats in the house are taken by super boxes and people who are going to pay a lot of money to have them. And they don't care that much about where visiting radio sits. I'm not sure they care so much about where home radio sits in some of them. So when I did the game, Super Bowl 52, I was sitting in a corner of the end zone in Minneapolis, 110 yards away from that final pass where it landed. And that's a U.S. Bank Stadium's a new stadium, relatively new stadium. And I understand, and I haven't been there, that the stadium in Los Angeles doesn't care much about us. And the stadium in, Pittsburgh's not very good. You listen, I'm happy when I go to the Patriots Stadium. I'm happy there. We're in like an underhang, and you can really have a good shot at the field. The same thing, Soldier Field is pretty good, but you get the newer the stadium, the less they seem to care about where they put the broadcasters. Now, the best stadium. So the Eagles are very, very kind, and when they were building Lincoln Financial Field, they did consult me, and I got my 2 cents in about where I thought the broadcast booth should be located, and we have a great view. There is no better view than MetLife Stadium, where the Giants and Jets play, because you've been there. The media is right at the center of the field, and they have the scoreboards down on the field level. We're right behind the Giants and the Eagles benches, so I don't have to look up and say what's the down or what's the time or how many timeouts. It's all right there for you. And I still love, even though it's not the greatest view in the world, but it's an adequate view, I still love the thrill of walking into Lambeau Field and looking down and say, I remember Vince Lombardi standing down there with the condensation coming out of his mouth and the frozen tundra of Green Bay, Wisconsin, as John Facenda used to say. I remember all of that. That was great. So I don't know what they're going to do with the Washington Stadium, but somehow or other, I'm not optimistic that Josh Harris is going to say, let's see, where should we sit radio? I think that will come. That will come between decision 234 and 706. Yeah.
While you're still with me here, Merrill, I want to quickly give a shout out to a guy we both know and love. Mike Dougherty was one of 17 people that was recognized, I think, in late June by the Hall of Fame with an award of excellence. Mike spent 37 years as in the Eagles video department, many of them as the director of video. Terrific guy, retired in 2013. I love the story he told me once when I did a story on him where he was struck by. I hadn't gotten to Philadelphia yet, but he was struck by lightning, I think, in 1979 when he was up on one of those hydraulic lifts filming practice, and lived to tell about it. I mean, it ricocheted off his head, and he lived to tell about it. So
Mike's a great guy. Mike deserved it. Mike was very funny. We would get on the bus, the football operations bus, to go to a game from the hotel, and there were times when I sat down and Mike would turn back to me and say, "Wait a minute, they won last week and you were sitting on the left side of the aisle. Get over on the left side of the aisle." I got up, I moved to the left side of the aisle.
Yeah. The Hall of Fame is going to enshrine 9 more people on Saturday. None of them are Eagles. Joe Klecko is one of them, though, a former Temple guy from your alma mater, and a terrific guy, and nice to see. I'm hopeful next year that Eric Allen is going to get in. He's been a semifinalist in the last 3 years.
Mystifying. How can he not be? I'll give you 2 others who can be there. I know his career was shortened by injuries, but anybody who watched Mike Quick play knows what a great receiver he was. Mike deserves the Hall of Fame, and so does my good friend Bill Bergey. Bill Bergey was the dominant linebacker during his era. He was great.
Yeah. One guy who may get in next year, Merrill, who's passed away a while back and we never saw play, but he's an Eagle who has been overlooked for so many years, is Al Wistert. Was on the 48, 49 championship teams, 6 All-Pros in 9 years, and never got in. And now he is one of 12 semifinalists for the 3 senior nominations for the 2024 class. So there seems to be some hope that just when you thought Al Wistert would never get in the Hall of Fame, and he's certainly not going to be around to enjoy it and cherish it, but may get into the Hall of Fame next year. So that'll be kind of nice if it happens.
That would be nice.
Yeah. Long overdue. Merrill, listen, I can't thank you enough for being my very first guest on my first podcast.
Thank you, Domo. This is the fastest hour I ever spent.
Well, I'm going to have you back, and we'll go through another fast hour sometime.
Good, we'll do it.
So you take care of yourself, and I'm looking forward to your first broadcast in a few weeks when the Eagles open the season.
Thank you, Paul.
That kind of wraps up episode 1 of the Bird's Nest podcast. I hope you enjoyed it enough to return next week when my guest will be someone that I don't know if Merrill's as fond of as me, Joe Banner, the former Eagles president, who kindly will be on. We'll talk the NFL. I think I said former president, not current. We'll talk the NFL. We'll talk the 33rd team where he works and co-founded the online website that I work for and that he co-founded 3-4 years ago. So he'll be on. I hope you guys will join in and listen to it. You can follow me on Twitter or X or whatever they call it these days at pdomo. You can also email me at pdomo@aol.com. Yes, I am one of the few remaining people in civilization who still has an AOL account. And look for me on the 33rd Team website, where I write regularly on the NFL. So this week, I think it's going to appear tomorrow. There'll be a story on Don Coryell, one of the people that's going into the Hall of Fame this Saturday. Merrill had mentioned Sid Gilman, the former Eagles assistant coach who was a head coach in the league, and he went into the Hall of Fame years ago. And, Don kind of expanded, Don and Sid basically created or grew the modern passing game in the NFL. I mean, without them, we'd still be possibly be in a 3 yards in a cloud of dust era. So they've made the game exciting. And Don Coryell is finally going in. He died in 2010. Want you to be sure to check out all the other great podcasts on A2D Radio, including my good buddy, former Inquirer colleague and friend, Les Bowen, who I believe his podcast is on Thursdays, and you can get it anytime. So have a good night, and I hope you'll be back next week to next episode of Bird's Nest.